The Uneducated Economist here. So, thank you for joining in on the live stream. Already got a bunch of you, 21 people with 14 likes already. Go hit that like button when you join in on the live stream. The algorithm loves it. They'll pick up the video, spread it around for more people to join in. Love the title. Yeah, I know. I'm taking my chances with this one. But really, there's a lot of truth inside of that title. Like, if you know what this means, sucking hind tit. Now, a lot of times, people look at this and think about it as like some kind of really negative thing. And it really is, because it comes from like the farming, the agricultural aspect of things. Sucking hind tit is where, like, if you have a litter of pigs and the runt of the litter has the very last access to what would be the most nutritious food providing teat on the hog, on the mother hog, essentially. So, like, the last pig, the one who's the smallest, the one who doesn't have as much strength or weaker than all the rest, has last access to the food, essentially. And that's where, like, sucking hind tit, the very last tit doesn't provide as much for the piglet as the rest of them does going up the line. And so this is really where sucking on hind tit came from, is that, the animal that had the least strength, or the weakest one, would also be given the least amount of nutrition coming from the mother itself, sucking on the hind tit. I think I kind of explained that pretty well. And so really, when you think about the economy, that's a lot of where, like, most people are, right? They don't really look at things in a sense of the agricultural business, but really, when you think about it in this fashion, it's really what it's coming down to. The people who have first access to the funds, to the money, the ones who are closest to it, they're the ones who are the strongest, the ones who have the most, who seem to be the, the richest, the most wealthy, whatever. It has that appearance of being like on a whole different class, right? That's where the wedge is, right? People down here at the very end, we look at it and we say, man, how come it is that we suffer so much at the other side of it? Well, it's because we're sucking hind tit. We're the ones who have last access to that money. We're out there trading our time for dollars. We're hustling, working construction, doing services, building our careers or a business. But the people who are borrowing money to buy cash flowing assets, they're the ones who have first access to the money. They're the ones who have the richest funds. They're the ones who are separating themselves from the rest, the weaker class, the people who can't afford as much in life, because they are at the very end of the line having last access to the money. They're the ones sucking on hind tit, right? So now, when we think about this, really, it's pretty much a naturally occurring thing within the economy. I mean, if we go and we study Cantillon and we look at the Cantillon effect, we can see it clearly. That when new money comes into the system, the people who have first access to that money, they get to spend it at face value, get to increase their standard of living, get to move into luxuries. But everybody else at the end of the line, as that money is flowing through the system, they have to work ever increasingly harder for it. They find that their wages don't keep up with the prices. They find that the people who are on the other side of the wedge are moving into luxuries, which is driving in ever increasing amounts of foreign production and driving out the domestic manufacturers. Again, they're the ones sucking at the end of the line, right? As these domestic manufacturers are leaving, they're taking the good jobs, which is separating the rich from the poor even more. So again, when you look at it from this direction, it really starts to make a lot of sense that if you're one of the type of people who is out there hustling a 9-to-5 or trying to start up your business or trying to, figure out what it is that you need to do in order to acquire the things that you need in life, and then realize that there's people out there who are literally borrowing money to buy cash flowing assets, and they don't really have to work or do anything for it. Okay? They're the ones who have the first access to the money. As that money starts to flow through, we're all chasing goods and service, or chasing by selling goods and services in order to acquire those funds to have our standard of living. And this is the reason why we suck at the hind tit, right? So again, I think this is a great metaphor, as far as understanding how the Cantillon effect works. And by thinking about it in this fashion, the people who have first access to the money are the ones who are going to separate themselves from the rest of the people, having better, if you think about it from the animalistic kind of things, from the farm, the ones who had that first access are going to grow stronger, they're going to be bigger, they're going to be better, they're going to be more awesome than the ones who are at the very end of it, who are going to suffer in weakness, being weak, not being able to acquire some of the things that they need, and they're going to stay and remain weak because they're not being provided for, in the sense that they're at the very end of the line of the money. All right, same thing. It's such a great, simple way to understand it, and it makes a lot of sense. So, anyway, we're going to try and keep the video somewhat short today. I got some things to do, so we got about another 25 minutes here, and then I'm going to call it quits. So we're going to do a half-an-hour video today. Let's go through some of these comments and talk about this. What's the topic today? That's exactly it. How the separation of the rich and the poor really is taking place, and that if you look at it from this fashion, those who are at the end of the line will constantly be at the end of the line. It will be ever increasingly more difficult for them. And if you can't figure out what it is that's creating it, it's because of the new money coming in and the people who have first access to that money and what it is that they do with that money. And this is the reason why we are experiencing a lot of the things that we are doing, or we are. Like, a lot of times we can blame it on politicians. That's cool. We can, there's plenty of blame to go around. But to understand it from an economic force that is far beyond, government control. Right? This is due to the industriousness of the people from years ago that had raised the standard of living, increased the amount of foreign production that was coming into the nation, and decreased the amount of domestic manufacturing that we could use to export. This was the major problem, and it started separating the rich from the poor. So as long as they were able to pour new money in through debt issuance, the problems that separated the rich from the poor were going to grow worse. And again, the people who had last access to that money were going to suffer greatly because of this. And it's going to continue on until the debt issuance comes to an end. Let's go take a look at that $10 from Lumberjack Landlord. Thank you so much, Matthew. I appreciate the $10. The old saying is absolutely true. If you need money, it's harder to get. When I had no money, no bank would lend to me. When I had assets and money, banks call and ask if any projects are coming. Yeah, and that's just, again, like, if you think about it, the weakest people out there, if you think about it from this fashion, right, the weakest people out there will have the hardest time to access the money, right? It's like, it's almost a forced outcome from it. Like, I don't even know how else to describe it. People say, well, it should be better, it should be different, it should, they should give them opportunity. Yeah, that's the way it should be, but that's not the way the world works. It's not the way survival of the fittest works, right? It's not the way that nature will take its course, right? This is another thing that I think a lot of people don't really even take into consideration, is that there's a human nature aspect to this, right? And that the laws of survival means that the strongest should survive and the weak need to be let go, need to be removed. That's the way and there's no difference here, right? Now, I granted, we are civilized, we are man, we can come up with rules and regulations and stuff like that, but you can't stop Mother Nature. You can't stop the natural forces that are occurring out there, and you can't stop the strongest or survivors, right? Only the strongest should survive. And that, and Mother Nature will take over and try to eliminate the weak. And there's no difference that is taking place right here, right now. Right? To understand it, those just like, man, I am in this weak position. I can't be. I need to figure out how it is that I become strong. Not be around here with these weak people, or have this idea that there's going to be some sort of change to make my life better. That's not the way it works. You got to figure out how the system is and how to move up the line. Right? To not be at the end of the line sucking on the last tee, because there's not going to be anything there for you. Thank you very much for the $10 too, Matthew. I really appreciate you, man. And I'll send you an email here later. We'll get the times knocked out. Whatever mic you're using is on fire. Is it good or is it bad? Because really, I think that it's the car itself. I think the studio type of car really does for much better sound. So let's see here. Thanks so much, Jack support. Okay, what about subsidies to the poor, food, medical, shelter? Is the middle class at the last tee? No, the middle class is not. The middle class is right in the middle, they're not. The people at the end of the line, they're the ones. Even if you think about it, the idea of subsidizing the poor, like with food and shelter and all this other stuff, actually keeps them in the weak position, right? It's like they're not able to actually go to the economy and survive off of it. They have to have some other artificial tube that's coming in and offering some sort of nutrition, some nutrients, right? That's really what's happening there. It's not like being in the economy itself and being able to move up the line, right? And say, hey, I'm gonna move up and get to a better access to more funds, quality funds, useful funds that are going to make me stronger and more healthy and a better person, right? They're at the very end of the line trying to survive. So they're like, man, they're not going to survive on this last tit. Boom, here's a feeder tube and maybe we can keep you alive. You really shouldn't exist. That's really what Mother Nature is trying to say. Like, you got to go, right? And I mean, I don't like saying it like that because it's very like, kind of cold-hearted and almost, but it's like, you got to understand, it's nature, right? It's like survival of the fittest, and you can't understand that exists in the world, and I'm sorry, but that's really what exists in the world. So again, like, that's the way I kind of look at it, is that if government's like subsidizing that's literally sticking a feeding tube in them to keep them alive, All right, moving on. It's amazing. Thank you. Studio car, yeah, absolutely. Sound dampening technique in car interiors built into project from road noise. Yeah. Oh, to protect from road noise. Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, I could not find, and when I was starting the channel and looking for places to do video, like, I would do it in the house, but then you would hear all this echo, and then there would be people moving around, you hear the dog bark or whatever. Even in the car, outside noise doesn't really, like, I mean, it interferes with the video some, but it doesn't really stop me from like continuing on. So if, like, somebody is out here playing music or whatever, I would just roll up the window and continue on with what I'm doing. But yeah, the sound makes everything, like the seats and everything, absorbs all the echoing. So it's just a very clear, very nice sound, All right. The problem is really desperate people are dangerous. So we have an incentive to keep the weakest, most desperate people from becoming violent. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Paul. That is very much a huge concern, right? And if you provide for these people, then there would be less reason for them to go out there and commit crimes in order to acquire some of the things that they need. I totally get that part, right? And to me, like, when I see that, this is how I kind of really look at it. It was just like, when I think about providing this type of, like, here, we'll give them shelter, we'll give them food, we'll give them cigarettes, we'll get all this other stuff, right? To keep them from committing crimes. And so when I think about that, to me, it's not necessarily trying to help those people. Like, I don't see that as some sort of like, hey, we feel sorry, we want to help these people. What I see taking place there is more like, I have money, like these people, a group of people have an extreme amount of money, and they don't like looking at this. And they're doing whatever they can to throw money at it to make it disappear, so they don't have to actually visually see it. So if they can put them in a location or give them something, then they don't have to be out there in the street in their face begging or doing whatever. That's really what's taking place, is that the higher wealthy people out there who are throwing money at this are not trying to help. They're trying to make it disappear because they don't like seeing it. And if you see, and if you kind of take on this kind of view of it, it starts making a lot more sense why it doesn't work, right? Like, all these people are throwing all this money at it, and it doesn't make sense to all the rest of the working class people out there who don't have any money or living paycheck to paycheck. They're looking at all these rich people doing this, and they're like, what are you doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this isn't, like, what are you doing, right? But they don't understand that back there in the rich people's mind, they're trying to make it disappear, and they don't know how to make it disappear, right? And they're willing to throw as much money as they want to make their environment appear to be clean and nice and beautiful without that, right? And that's what they're trying to do, and that's why it doesn't make any sense. It's because people with a lot of money who are just throwing money at the problem trying to fix it don't realize that's not going to fix the problem, right? Or the problem that they see. It's like, it's a natural consequence of new money coming into the system, separating the rich from the poor. That is going to be part of it. And making it disappear by throwing money at it doesn't work, right? In fact, it kind of makes the problem worse, because really the symptoms that are being fought against are are believed to be the problems, right? So like they continue to fight these symptoms, which causes the problems to grow. Anyway, moving on. Thank you again, Matthew, for Lumberjack Landlord, for the $10. Simon is exactly right. I see women with 3 kids on Section 8, fuel, electrical, food, assistance, and housing paid for. $4,500 a month worth of benefits. She will never work. She will never make that much. Yeah, you know how hard it is to make $4,500 a month? I mean, you know, I know how hard it is to make $4,500 a month. And if somebody was out there saying, hey, we have this available to you, however, if you go get a job, we're going to have to take it away. Like, okay, you know, like, why would I go and get a job, right? Like, I can't take that kind of risk to go and get a job and deny that $4,500, which is guaranteed to me, right? You see the problem that's taking place here? Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have something out there to help women and children out. I totally get that part of it. All I'm saying is that the reality of the situation is creating this problem that is going to get worse. You know? My water bottle's frozen here. Wow, that's some cold water. All right. Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate it. See, this is somebody who sees it firsthand. I mean, Matthew is like, I mean, I don't know, forget how many, you know, properties he rents out, but it's a lot of them, right? So he sees like a broad spectrum of people out there, you know, from all the way from like the higher end all the way down to the lower end, and sees the issues that these people are facing, right? You know, again, like, how is it that you get yourself on the other side of the wedge? It is very difficult. You have to start young, really young. Like before you even graduate high school, you got to be starting on it. Getting on the other side of the wedge, that is. Getting into assets, building that stock portfolio, figuring out how you save and earn money, how you live cheaply, right? And you do this hardcore in the early days, and you actually have a chance of getting on the other side of the wedge. You're 40 years old. You have nothing. You are in debt, no house, no nothing at all, and you're trying to figure out how to get on the other side of the wedge. You know how difficult of a task that is? You know how hard and how continuous and how much effort you have to get in just to try and make sure that you can even maintain a good life, let alone get on the other side of the wedge where you can have an exceptional one where vacations and toys and things like that can occur in your life. It's almost impossible, right? Starting from a younger age, you actually have a chance because you have something called compounding interest. Youth is by far the greatest gift to an investor. Like, the greatest gift in the entire world. And people never take advantage of it. It is so sad. I didn't do it. Like, I mean, I'm trying to get my boys into it. It just because I understand, but most people don't realize when you are young, you have the best chance in the world for getting on the other side of the wedge because you have youth on your side, right? Time is on your side, I mean. All right, let's go check out this other super chat. We got AJ with the $5. The 3 most dangerous words in any language. Daddy, I'm hungry. Yeah, for sure. Because when a man loses it all, he will lose it, right? I mean, you don't want a hungry, pissed off family man, right? I mean, it's just like, that is the worst right there. Okay, this is a good time to invest for S&P 500 ETF. All right, maximize margin between income and expenses and invest in appreciating assets. Put me over 500K mark by 29 despite working normal blue collar jobs. That's right. Discipline and game plan, right? I mean, you had a motivation. Like when I was 20 years old, 21 years old, the only thing I cared about was getting my check and going and getting drunk and high. That's the only thing I cared. Like the next hangout, party, fun, whatever it was that I had going on, I certainly did not think about saving money for the future. Not at all, you know. And man, did they come back, right? Like 40 years old and nothing. It was like, Jesus, what did I do, right? You know, and you're looking back on things, it's just like, man, if I had only done things different, you know. But lessons in life are repeated until learned. All right. The one worst word ever, Reaganomics. Trust funding is how you keep money in the family. What's the best way to invest into partial assets? Are you able to invest increments into the S&P 500? Are you able to invest in partial ownership of real estate? Well, I mean, there is different ways that you can go about it. Like even all-nighter right now, who use sweat equity to try and get into a partnership into real estate. You got to be creative in a lot of ways that you do things. Now, I personally, yeah, buy little pieces into the stock market. I use simple Cash App. Right? I mean, just a simple app like that. Now, I have other ones, other online brokers that I use. It's not the only one, but it happened to be one that I was using just because I wanted to do an experiment by buying a stock portfolio and buying into Bitcoin, $50 a week, each one of those, to see which one would do better by the end of the year. It was a great fun experiment, but now that I had it up, I just kept going with it, right? I never cashed out or anything else. So I use Cash App, and you can buy $10, $50, $100. It doesn't matter what it is. You can buy whatever amount you want. And you can't necessarily buy into everything that's available out there in the stock market, into all the ETFs and stuff like that, but there is a lot of stuff that you can get into. So, and I mean, there's a lot of people out there who really start taking it up and start moving it into like, some really investing opportunities, and, trading options and stuff like that. I'm not into any of that stuff, not at this point. I'm more of like a saver, building up a stock portfolio, stacking up the Bitcoin and silver, owning a house, so I have a little bit into real estate or trying to buy the house. So I like, spreading it all out. But again, like, I'm just getting started. Like a lot of people look at like all the, the years of YouTube that I've had out there, and they see like some of the things that I've done, and they think, man, you must be some kind of like, got all kinds of millions of dollars and stuff. It's not like that at all, right? It's only the YouTube channel has done pretty well over the last few years, and it's gotten me out of debt. It's got me able to get a down payment on a house, and it's done a lot of stuff, but it certainly hasn't made me rich by any means, right? But we're on our way, and we're moving that direction, so. All right, Douglas, $2. Thank you so much. Cash flow assets besides rental. I mean, something as simple as dividend paying stocks is a cash flowing asset. If you get really smart, you can find, businesses or something that, like I even heard of a guy like get kind of creative out there. He would buy, like he found somebody, I don't know where he was at, some place where they allowed gambling. And apparently he could buy these poker machines and rent them to this guy who would put them in these game rooms, and he would get not only the rent for the machine, but then he would also get a little cut of what the machine took. And so like there's a cash flowing asset too, just by buying these things and getting into it. It's a little bit of a business kind of opportunity, but like that's just one of like all kinds of opportunities out there to try and find ways of making money. I don't know, start a YouTube channel. You can get some cash flowing, business going that way just by putting out YouTube videos and stuff. Like that's what I'm doing. But it's also, you can advance that into, selling and marketing all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of ways you can go about making money. And I mean, as far as buying an investment with a cash flowing asset, a YouTube channel isn't really that way, but dividend paying stocks are. Sounds like a mafia cut. Yeah, I don't know how all that worked. I mean, I don't even know if it was legal, but whatever. That's what he said he did. Looking at, I told him he should help her. She got mad at me. Oh, you guys are talking there. Cash flow assets are just building businesses and having them run themselves. Yeah, that's right. All right, one thing I never heard you speak about is AI robotics on and post-abundance topics. Are you anticipating this will continue deflationary pressure, which will force government to encourage even more inflation? Are you talking about, like, I don't know, the presumption of what AI is going to do to the economy is very, like, it's very open to opinion, right? I mean, it's like people are like, oh no, it's going to do this, and it's just like, okay, well, a lot of people said that women were going to be out on the streets with no job, begging for money because the operators were, switching to digital, right? Before they had telephone operators who would be switchboard operators, moving wires from one location to another. And they said all these people were going to be homeless out on the streets, starving and stuff like that, because of this new advancement in technology that came in to, deny them their ability to have a job. What did it do? Right? Did it do that? Well, maybe for some for a short amount of time, but it didn't create a situation in which that they were dying on the streets. They actually became professionals, started becoming doctors and lawyers and politicians and stuff. That's what the women did. They went and got themselves educated because now they weren't wasting their time doing some meaningless job. They actually had the ability to go out there and pursue some of the things that they truly should have been doing with their life. I look at advancements in technologies as a great thing. It is a good thing. It frees up your time to go and pursue the things that you should have been doing with your life. Right? A lot of people say, what am I going to do for work? What am I going to do for money? Whatever, figure it out, man. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to make money out there. It may not be the way that you are hoping for. Well, I mean, yeah, nothing is the way we hope it for, right? I mean, we got to find our opportunities. We got to find where it is that it's available. And if we think things are going to stay the same forever, they're not, right? And there's nothing that we can do to make sure that it does stay fitting for us. We have to adapt to the situations that are at hand, and changes to it, there's no stopping it. It is on its way. There is always going to be change. And it's best to embrace it. Embrace it for what it is, and enjoy the new technologies, enjoy the freedom that it gives you, enjoy the opportunity to go and pursue some of the things that you really should have been doing with your life. That's the way I look at it. I don't look at it as a dangerous thing. I look at it as a good thing. All right. Hey, Brody. Hey, Simon. Do you think the Fed will need to do any token bait cuts to establish their credible threat this year? Do you expect markets to run up? If so, yeah, I do. In fact, that's something that I had brought up a long time ago. In fact, I think I talked about it in a Zuber interview at the end of last year. Because Mike had asked me, if they plan on cutting rates this year, and I said, well, they probably do some sort of symbolic cut, just to make sure that credible threat is well established. But you think even a single cut to the Fed funds rate really won't do that much for stimulating the economy. Now, the markets themselves and everybody else and the people and the investors and everything will just love that idea. They will eat it up with all kinds of beautiful, sweet sugar syrups and everything else that goes with it, because they love the idea of the Federal Reserve cutting rates. But it doesn't, like we know from this channel, that the actual interest rate cuts has very little impact on the economy any longer. And in fact, even cutting a quarter point really will leave the Federal Reserve more in a stimulative fashion anyway, right? Because of the neutral interest rate and how far above the neutral interest rate they really are. So if they're above the neutral interest rate, that's a restrictive economy. Even if they cut interest rates, they're still going to be restrictive because they got to cut far enough below neutral to stimulate, which really is probably not much in the cards, even considering how high the inflation expectation and interest rates have been over the last few months, even years. It's still not dragging the neutral interest rate up far enough for the Federal Reserve to become accommodating to the economy. Now, I know that's really difficult for a lot of people to understand because not too many people discuss the neutral interest rate. But the neutral interest rate is the rate that is neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. And this neutral interest rate is really close to zero. Now, granted, with the higher inflation expectation, and the elevated interest rate, that neutral interest rate over time will begin to rise. But because it was so close to zero for such a long time, the amount that it's actually risen has not been that much. There is no way of telling where this neutral interest rate is. Now, there is no chart, there is nothing out there. In fact, the neutral interest rate can only really be observed from in the past. Like, you can look back and see where the neutral interest rate is, but you can't see where it is today. And this is really where I think a lot of times that the obscurity of the Federal Reserve's monetary system really starts to play out, because people don't consider this neutral interest rate. They don't even know that it exists, and they don't know that it was a problem for the Federal Reserve. So considering that they need to get the neutral interest rate elevated in order for them to drop below that neutral interest rate to stimulate the economy, it's going to take ever persistence and higher expectation of inflation for a significant amount of time, right? Far longer than what anybody had anticipated. Now, it's hard to explain this in a short, quick, video like this. But this is ultimately what they are up to. And if they can get those neutral interest rates to remain or keep the inflation expectation elevated, they can get the neutral interest rate to rise. However, the expectation of a slow economy is going to be very difficult for the Federal Reserve to continue to operate in. They actually need the people to believe that the economy is going to do well into the future in order for the people to participate in the economy. Like, are you willing to spend your money if you are worried that there is going to be hard times? Well, if the interest rates are being cut, a lot of people are going to find that exciting and say, hey, I want to participate within the economy with the idea that in the future, the rates are going to go down and I will be able to refinance my mortgage or whatever. This is going to spark like people excited about participating in the economy, this idea of lowering interest rates. However, it doesn't stimulate the economy. In fact, it'll leave it still restricted, but the people don't know that. And that's what's really scary about this whole thing, is that literally communicating out to the economy that there will be cuts and going into the future, and by actually providing one, will drive home that stimulation that the people will then participate in, even though the Fed doesn't have to do anything. Just the market itself will then become active. Did I say all that right? So yeah, I do believe that they will do at least one symbolic cut this year. They don't have to, but I think it would establish that credible threat in a more profound fashion, especially if they do want to bring stimulative aspects to the economy. Like if they feel that it's time to cut rates, all they have to do is communicate it out there that they're going to do it, make sure that the markets know that it's guaranteed into the future, and then it will actually start to take place within the economy before the Fed even adjusts the rates, right? Then they will cut it just to make sure that it's established. But, all right. I got to go, guys. It was a lot of fun hanging out here, but we got to cut this video just a little bit shorter than our normal lunchtime ones, which we usually take up to 45 minutes. Public schools and public libraries, refugees, welcome them all. Big Brother, Big Father, and Really Big Mother was that no fix? Public schools are also funded federally by the DOE, but it comes with conditions. Yeah. Eyebrows. Who is this guy? Lay it down. Yeah, I'm just a dude out in the car. All right, Kiyosaki saying, do not buy anything for 18 months. Your thoughts? Yeah, but I've been saying that for a while now, that your buying opportunities are becoming into the future. As far as don't buy anything for 18 months, I don't know where he gets this timeline from. Like me right now, what I see is some liquidity issues that are starting to take place within the markets. Credit conditions are getting tighter. The Federal Reserve is still in their quantitative tightening. The issues that are starting to show up within like the luxury toy items, they're starting to get cheaper. You're finding a lot more of them out there on like Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that. So to me, like I'm seeing those buying opportunities happen, whether or not it happens in the stock market, real estate market, or just literally in physical items. Like you could go out there and get that new Camaro or whatever for a cheaper price from somebody who bought it when they shouldn't have, and now they're hurting for money. Those kind of opportunities, I think, are going to present themselves so long as the credit tightening conditions are still prevalent within the economy. Those things are going to happen, right? Give it time. It's going to get more painful for the people, and they're going to start selling their toys to try and make sure they can make their credit payments. So yeah, I mean, I would agree somewhat with that, I guess. Buy some Disney stock. Hind Tit described in detail. Start of stream. You'll have to rewind. Kiyosaki has a good track record. Listen, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. He talked about a bunch of devastating times to the economy happening within a shorter period of time that never really occurred. I like his views on a lot of things. I like the way he describes and talks about the economy, but a lot of the prediction stuff, that's why I don't really give predictions that much, right? I don't give timelines and predictions and stuff unless it's like from another source, like, you know, talking about how the Treasury was going to go into a bond buyback program in the middle of this year. That was from their own statements. That wasn't my prediction trying to figure out where it is that they were going to time this to. This was coming from their own statements. That's why I was predicting that, which has actually turned true, right? I mean, here it is starting to take place, and still nobody talks about it or even knows it. And they're wondering, why is the credit getting so difficult to get? Why is it, like, you know, so hard? Like, this is the reason, you know, but nobody really notices. Okay, guys, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being here. We got 397 people watching, which is awesome, and 149 likes. Thank you very much for hitting that like button. When you hit the like button, the YouTube algorithm will pick up the video and spread it around for more people to join in. Simon, you never talked nonsense. Yeah, I try not to talk too much nonsense. Like, everything that I talk about, I try to back up with something, like an article or some sort of information that you can go and then read and then judge for yourself where it is that I'm coming up with my ideas, and then take my opinion for what it is. Like, you can form your own opinion and then listen to mine and say, I don't know if I agree with you, dude. Right? And that's the reason why I do it. It's just like, people are like, where do you come up with that? It'd be like, right there. There's the link. Go check it out for yourself. You know? So, all righty, guys, I gotta go. Thank you very much for those super chats. We got $27 in super chats, which you guys are always so very generous with those things and contributing to the channel. Thank you for everybody who had joined the channel just recently. Had quite a few people who have joined the membership. We're gonna get some live stream membership videos out here real soon. And I did a 4.5 hour. I just wanted to talk about this I did a 4.5 hour long live stream the other night, and I tell you, it was a long time being out there, but it was one of the coolest live streams that we have done in a very long time. I wasn't intending on being out there that long, but I just kept asking. It was just like, okay, well, you know, if you want me to stick it out for another 15, 20 minutes, get the likes up to, you know, this certain level. And I got 1,100 likes going on in that live stream with less than 500 people watching, right? So, like, people were filtering through this live stream, had 10,000 views over the course of the 4 hours with 1,100 likes. It was a lot of fun. It was, and I mean, normally, like, being out there for 4 hours is just exhausting or whatever, but it was actually a lot of fun. It was really enjoyable. It was one of the better streams that we have done, even with that length of time to it. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody who was participating in that particular live stream. Thank you for being there. It was so cool, and I appreciate you all. All right, Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.